Ta-da! Hi, everybody. I'm John Donvan, and welcome. I also want to welcome the other people you see on the screen, Nayeema Raza and Nick Gillespie. This is a rare gathering of open to debate moderators. I think this is the first time the three of us have ever been on a screen together. So thank you.
Yes.
And why are we here? So we are here to celebrate the launch of our Substack. And for us now, Substack is a new home that we have built for the thing that we want to encourage among you, our fans, our followers, and that is open dialogue, genuine connection with our community. So Nayeema and Nick are here to talk with me today a little bit behind the scenes about the art of moderation, how we do it, why we do it, what we think about when we're doing it, what our goals are, and why it's important to be doing all of this right now. So we want you to ask any questions that you have, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. But before we launch into that, I have a little bit of business that I want to get out of the way, and that's to talk a little bit about what we're up to these days. First, you may have been noticed that we've been doing a lot more live events in the recent past. In fact, in the past year, the majority of our debates have happened live. And this is a big effort for our small team, but it's a very fun thing for us after the pandemic kind of put us all virtual. Now that's years behind us, and we have been gradually and now much more fulsomely returning to the live real stage. And we want to be bringing you more of those live events in the coming years, because there's nothing like being in front of a live audience, having the debaters be in front of a live audience and know that they are trying to talk with real people. But we are also launching a series of live virtual events as well. We are going to be doing conversations like the one that we're going to be having shortly that take you behind the curtain and show you how we build these debates, what we think about, and of course, the effort we make to make sure that they are good debates, impartial debates, that we're not putting our fingers on the scale, that we're really trying to, we'll talk about what it is, what we're trying to do. And third, we want to create something special for our most engaged community members here on Substack. And that's what today's conversation is going to be about. We want to make a home for people who believe that disagreement does not have to mean that you don't like each other, that having a dispute doesn't mean that you have to be an enemy, that there can be good faith disagreement among good faith people who have their reasons for holding their ideas, and that the best ideas emerge when we're willing to test them against the toughest opponent and the curious, those who may have wondered what exactly is the other side's argument on this question. So we're inviting you to join us with the conversation here on Substack. And I'm usually generally pretty formal on stage. There's a possibility I may be letting my hair down a little bit in this one. But first,
love that.
I just want to say hi to Nick and
I notice he's even doing the kind of method acting stuff. He's scratching his head and his face. He's like
right,
pure James Dean right here. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I love it.
Let me first I wanted to say nice things about the two of you. So let me just say that Nick is the editor-in-large of Reason. And Nayeema, I got to tell people about your very fun new podcast, Smart Girl, Dumb Questioned, which is just fantastic. So I wanted to give you both of those credits. And now, please speak.
Oh, I was just going to say, when we were originally invited to this, I just assumed that the moderator-in-chief, John Donvan, was going to be moderating a debate between myself and Nick Gillespie. So I was, making a list of all the things that Nick and I could didisagree civilly about.
Yeah, we got a lot of bones between us.
So I'm curious for both of you, since your format, Nayeema, is interview format on your podcast, and Nick, you do a lot of at Reason. You do a lot of interviews, and you're both terrific interviewers. I've told you that both many times. And how, just for you, how is moderating a program where the role is very different from interviewing, but how is it different? Nayeema, if you can go take that question first, how is it different from interviewing for you?
I think the nature of open to debate invites a lot more structure, but in some ways the conversation is still interrogative. Like you're actually questioning. You're inviting both people to give their point of view, and you invite them to question each other's points of view as you also question on behalf of the audience. So there's some similarities, but the greatest difference for me is probably the amount of structure. I think that open debate has this very clear structure of allowing people to get their opening arguments out first before debating, and then obviously the closing argument. And that structure was, for me, the the greatest novelty. And I remember when I started as a guest moderator on Open to Debate, John very kindly sat down with me and gave me some of his great moderating tips. And one that you told me, John, that I have taken with me in interviewing was asking permission to interrupt the speakers before you actually start taping.
Actually, I've now refined that practice. I now ask for permission to interrupt in front of the audience. So if there's a live audience, I get them all in front of the audience to give me permission to interrupt, so that when I do interrupt, then I have the whole audience on my side for that one. Nick, what about you? How's the difference between moderating and interviewing?
For me, they're kind of very related, and it's partly because the moderation that I've tended to do for Open to Debate is less, it's less a conventional debate, and it's more of a conversation. So I recently did, earlier this year, I was in Seattle at the Cascade PBS Festival of Ideas, and for Open to Debate, I hosted a conversation between two people about Trump's impact on the First Amendment and kind of free speech and things like that. And it was less of a, okay, you got 3 minutes, you get 3 minutes, rebuttal, et cetera. And it was more like teasing out what the issues are. And that is closer to what I do for Reason on my the Reason interview podcast, where oftentimes I'll have a couple of guests and they tend to be complimentary. What I do like about the Open to Debate structure is, and actually it's partly the structure of going from, okay, you've got your say, now you've got your say, now engage with each other. But it really goes before that to the selection process, where you guys have done a very good job of weeding out bad faith arguers, because that is the big, that's the problem in our society today, right? Which is that fundamentally in any given conversation, and this is irrespective of ideology or where you start out, some people don't want to actually try to expand what we know to be true or gain better knowledge. They just want to win, a cheap momentary advantage in the moment, or like on a single point. And as if you have people who are acting like that, you just can't have a good debate or a good conversation.
Yeah, and when we started doing these 20 years ago now, and I joined the organization 18 years ago, so it's been quite a run. What we were doing under our previous name, Intelligence Squared, but now we are fully open to debate with the keyword open. What we were doing was kind of novel not that there'd never been debates before, of course there had, but in terms of what we were doing and putting out on social media, we were kind of alone out there, and it was fresh and sparkling. And especially, I would say, in the last 2 years or so, social media is just filling up with organizations claiming to be doing debate. But those, I don't want to sound prideful about what we're doing, but I am proud of it. Those programs that are calling themselves debate are really not what you were just talking about, Nick. They are kind of, you see the thumbnails on YouTube, such and such destroys such and such, or humiliate, and they are more
shreds.
Shreds, crushes.
John Donvan shreds. Yeah.
They're exercises in attempting to humiliate your opponent for clicks. And when you look at the comments that follow those, nobody says, I learned such and such about this issue, or I changed my mind after listening to the other side. They're all like cheering for their tribal leader in that point. And I really think that what we're doing and what we're still doing is putting on a program that is not it's a test. The ideas are tested against each other in a good faith way. And so what you're talking about, a bad faith debater, is one who's just going to try to humiliate and use personal attacks,
or just be Jesuitical. John and I were both raised Catholic, so we flinch when we hear that term, especially. But just to win on like a semantic or win or something like that, and that's not worth engaging in. And I'm glad Open to Debate is doing something very different.
Nayeema, yes, I think you're going to jump in. Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say that I think what's really important in the role of a moderator, and it's tied to the role of an interviewer, is I as Nick does on Reason, as I do in Smart Girl Dumb Questions, of trying to remember the reason we're all there. It is possible to have a debate go into the weeds or a conversation go into the weeds on a particular semantic point, and you can, but it's the core of the question that drives people. And I think that the fact that Open to Debate has stayed faithful to naming its debates the question, as opposed to the thumbnail heads that we're incentivized to use on social media, is a testament to what we're trying to do at Open to Debate. I also do wonder if it restricts our ability to grow in the moment where the algorithms and distribution invite us to take, extreme positions.
Yeah, that's
I don't think so. I'm sorry to talk over you, John, but no, I don't think so because, and I say this as somebody. Reason Magazine has been around since 1968. It's an alternative publication which benefited greatly from the rise of the internet and kind of almost cost-free distribution possibilities. But having said that, we're often like, we represent a particular point on the ideological spectrum. We can't get that big, et cetera. I mean, I think what Open to Debate has done and what it shows is that people, or there are millions of people who are starved for actual conversation, and this is, I think all of us who have been in journalism for more than like 5 or 10 years, you always worry like, now it's super commercialized, or it's like you got to go for the clicks, et cetera. And like, actually, there are more people than ever who are, just desperate for real conversation. So I think what you're doing, helps build towards that. And I think the audience, has been growing and will continue to grow. The other thing I wanted to add, as Nayeema was talking, was that your propositions also are very clear, which is essential, because you were saying like people get lost in the weeds about what we're talking about. And it's like, the debates are, they have basic propositions, which are like, okay, this is going to anchor the conversation on a topic that matters in a clear way. So you're not trying to win some side debate. It's just like, what's the big issue here, and how do we feel about it?
I'm wondering how. Oh, by the way, I want to break the fourth wall a little bit and talk to one of our team members behind the scenes. Max, would you please take a look? Would you please take a look at the email that I just sent you? Thank you very much. How do you feel about when you do encounter not necessarily a bad faith debater on our stage, because we're so careful not to have that happen, but it's very easy for debaters to start to slip into personal attacks. And I'll talk a little bit about how I deal with that, but I'm curious about how you do it. So we had a debate recently where one debater was really appalled by something that the other side said, and accuse that person of making a racist argument.
I'm going to try to give you the benefit of the doubt and suggest that wasn't a racist comment right there.
No, it's not a racist comment. I'm sorry.
No, because I think
that itself is an ad hominem attack.
All right,
sorry.
let's hold it. Hold it.
Immigrants do not
hold it. Attorney General, with respect to your office, we want to stay away from these attacks and labeling, please, and just go with the ideas.
Well,
you can argue the idea. You don't have to label what it is.
He can say anything that offensive that he wants
in this debate. About immigrants. He can say what he wants to say about this issue.
I will respond in substance to what he just said.
As the moderator in the moment, I'll just tell you what's going through my head, which is, number one, to call somebody's ideas racist is already a kind of personal attack that's going to put the other person's back up. It's also going to result in that person feeling compelled to have to respond to I'm not racist. How dare that we're going to chew up time, and our time is always so limited and valuable. Time is now going to be spent on defending against the personal attack. And the third thing is that accusing somebody's ideas of being racist is not actually grappling with the idea that was presented. It's characterizing the person who put it, or characterizing the overall atmosphere of, and whether it's racist or not, the person was making a detailed point that was not being responded to. So in that case, I stepped in and basically raised a yellow card and said, that's not what we do. And I'm sure that there were people who were watching that debate who were upset that I intervened at that point, especially if they agreed that the person was making a racist comment or not. But as the moderator of the debate, I stand by that decision. And I've had to make it, if we're going to go into these tribes of left and right, I've had to make that call against both sides. So I'm not taking sides on the substance. I'm taking sides on the content, on the definition of what it is we do, which is not, personal attacks are just out of bounds. Get us down a side road, and we have to stay away from it. And I never enjoy doing it, having to make that call. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but I do it, and I stick by it. I'm curious how you all feel about if you've been in that situation where you have to make that call or not.
I have been in that situation as an interviewer and as a conversation haver at dinner parties or on my show. And I've been in that situation where I push back. I think that the interesting thing about your role on Open to Debate is that you can't take a position, but you have to enforce the decorum and the ground rules of the debate. And John, I want to say, one, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's not an easy role to play. And I think it's probably an easier role for me to play for obvious visual reasons than for you to play, actually. And so I think it takes a lot of belief in the values of Open to Debate and what we're trying to do here for you to do that. I'm not familiar with the debate you're discussing, but I have had that situation where a question asker at one of my debates started to make personal attacks on one of the debaters. And I had to they obviously had some history. It went backwards, and I had to intervene. And that was a much easier situation in the sense that, you're also as a question asker in our debates, you're not as one of the joiners at the end to add to our discussion. You're not there to debate the debaters. We're not trying to add a sequel to the debate. We're trying to probe further. And so that was an easier ground rule maybe to hold. But I'm curious, Nick, what you think. And while you do that, I'm going to grab a charger for mine.
John, I remember a debate that you were moderating at an event, like a multi-day event, where you shut down the organizer of the event when he asked the question. This isn't quite the personal attack thing, but because you felt that his question was redundant or off topic. Yeah. And that is amazing to me. Like, I think, what you have done, and what, this is very much in keeping with the spirit of Open to Debate, where it's like it doesn't matter who's asking the question or who's making the charge. Like, if it's off topic or it's not right, you just move on. And I've also seen you several times say, hey, we've already covered that. Let's go to this next thing. I find that really helpful.
That's where, Nayeema was talking about the structure, and that's where having this structure helps, because if we have a single motion or a single question, it's about something very specific. And especially in debates where we have the audience vote. We used to do that routinely. We've been experimenting with not doing that, although very recently we returned to the vote for one debate. But I'm always thinking, at the end of this debate, the audience has to decide, do they agree with this motion or not? And so it's very easy for me to reach the conclusion in the middle of the debate. What's happening right now is not going to help the audience answer that question, because we're not talking about the question anymore. Mm-hmm. And so it gives me a place to pull back to the question. And then the other thing about somebody asking a question that goes on too long or that has been repeated is we just don't have that much time. I'm always watching the clock. And and speaking of questions, so we would love to have your questions, and we have some coming in. And here's a good one. What is the hardest part about staying neutral when moderating a heated debate? Nayeema, I've seen you do some pretty hot debates, and
does one particularly come to mind, John?
Yeah, there was one on dating apps where it was friendly, but it was intense and robust, and there were sharp disagreements. And I'm sure that you had your own views on the topic. You didn't tip your hand at all. But is it hard to stay neutral, do you think?
Yes, John is talking about a debate we had at the Comedy Cellar, and the resolution was around, is it time to break up with the dating apps? And we had an executive from a major dating app, Tinder, and a matchmaker debating that topic. I am a dater, so I have a point of view maybe on that subject. Is it hard not to tip my hand? Yeah, because I came to opinion journalism, and I came up as an opinion journalist. So that has been an education for me. But I think, again, the structure lends itself to why am I there? As a host, you're always there first and foremost for the audience, right? You are a proxy. And whether I'm interviewing someone and I want to ask that follow-up question that everybody has, the questions that we often, my whole show is around this idea that we all have questions and we're often afraid to ask them. And as a host, you're emboldened, and your role, your literal job description is to be that person. And I think in this kind of debate, it's not to take a point of view. It is to probe and further the conversation. That makes, but sure, we all have opinions. And I think about this as journalists. We all also vote and participate in society. But our job is to not do that.
And Nick, you came to our organization as a debater. You debated with us at least 3 or 4 times, I think.
Yeah, again, I think it was 4 or 5 times.
And you were, and when there was a vote, you were like, you won every time.
I am undefeated, and I kind of want to keep it that way. Like I'm like Jerry Seinfeld running in high school. Like I'm not going to run again if I can possibly avoid it. But, as a moderator, like I definitely have points of view about, everything. And the less I know about something, the stronger, I hold my viewpoint. But there have been times, and I'm thinking about there was one of the debates that I moderated for you guys had to do with, what is the role that race plays in various kinds of treatments of people, and it was 2 African Americans on the stage, and a couple of times the response to like race matters or it doesn't matter was just done in a way that it didn't offer up a rebuttal, because it wasn't, it just wasn't enough of a statement. And like that is something that was frustrating for me, or I didn't quite know how to deal with it immediately, because you can't be like, well, that's just stupid. Like if you're going to say, everything, that race is the overwhelming determinant of everything, and then you don't actually say, and here is a statistic that proves that, or here is a circumstance that shows it, it's really hard. And I want to keep the I want to keep the conversation going and things like that, but it's really hard to know how to kind of move the conversation forward.
I don't find it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nayeema.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say it's particularly hard if you feel. I'm curious if you think it's particularly hard when we feel that the side that we agree with, even if we're underinformed about it, but we agree with, is the side that's losing. And you find yourself intellectually wanting to kind of help make an argument, but you can't.
Yeah. Or also I sometimes wonder, because a couple of the debates that I've been on, I definitely going in, I leaned more heavily towards one side or the other. And sometimes I think that I might have been harder on the person who I agreed with, because I was trying to make sure that I wasn't partisan.
My old school journalism training is so burned into me, in which we were professionally obligated not to try as hard as possible not to inject our own opinions, and to be fair to both sides, so that each side would recognize themselves in how we describe them. Has in fact made it pretty. I find it comes to second nature not to take sides and not to get involved. So that's me. It's interesting for both of you having more opinion-based backgrounds, that it's more of a struggle.
Think the thing that you do, John, which is like a signature move that I have failed at every chance that I've had to pull this off, but like where you will recap somebody's argument in 1 or 2 sentences in a way that they do say, yeah, that is what I'm arguing. And then you go on from there, because to me, that's like at the center of a really productive conversation, whether somebody wins or loses, but like where you're agreeing, this is what I believe, this is what the other person believes, and here's how we're going to adjudicate which take is better. And that's really hard to do.
I've definitely borrowed that as well. I think it's so important. I find it very important to do that recap, because it's extremely important that people feel heard and feel well reflected, and also as for you to have a clear grasp on what that person is arguing as and when. I was just thinking of another tip that I wanted to bring up earlier when we were talking about shutting down questions that have happened or that have already been asked, et cetera. The thing that maybe everyone listening on the Substack has experienced is when someone wants to ask a question and then doesn't ask a question. And that is actually, that I just want to say
I've seen that.
Frustrating experience. It's very easy to cut down, but I love just asking people, well, what's the question? And that has been something I've brought into my life. And I think one of the things I've really learned from Open to Debate and has been, formative in the show I'm doing now is inviting people to ask questions and ask questions out loud to each other and really to genuinely ask a question, to be open-minded. And we think so much about the role of the debaters in that and the role of the moderators in that, but there's a huge role that the audience plays every episode on the show.
I try very hard to make sure the audience knows that I'm primarily there for them, especially when we're in front of a live audience. But that actually becomes like something that gives me sway over the whole event. If the audience is on my side, and when a really classic example is if somebody gets up in the audience and starts asking a question that goes on and on and on and on, and I stop them. I feel terrible stopping that person, but afterwards, so many members of the audience come up and say to me, "Thank you so much for stopping that person. That never happened." So speaking again of questions, another question that's come in: what's the future of the community? This community we're talking about. Are we going to have more events like these regularly? Very short answer to that is yes. This is our first one, and we're looking forward to having more. And I hope that Nayeema and Nick can be part of that. And we'll also have other members of our team. And who knows who else? We're working this out and figuring it out, but we're having a great time at it. What does a great moderator do that most never notice? Boy, a lot of preparation. I mean, I do a lot of preparation on the topic ahead of time so that I'm not surprised. I very much try to think that I know ahead of time what the arguments are going to be, so that I won't be surprised by them. I think for me, it's, Nayeema, you talked at the beginning about interrupting. It's finding a way to stop people without them seeming like you've stopped them and stepped on them. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
And John just stopped for a second while we were saying that. I find...
he's back.
Yeah. I find one of the things that I'm thinking about a debate I did on is the American dream on decline. And I went into that conversation with a point of view on that topic as a millennial maybe, but it was a great debate. And one of the things is you go in very prepared, and I had all of this data and armed with information and kind of a sense of what the debaters were going to argue. But I think the thing that goes unnoticed is actually when you are surprised, but you aren't caught off guard somehow through that preparation that you're talking about. And those are the moments that probably you think, oh, this debater is so prepared for, or this moderator is so prepared for this moment, when in fact you could be like completely stunned by a position someone takes or data you've never heard, but you kind of take it in stride. That's probably, I think, if we're going to sing our unsung praise, that's probably it.
I think related to that is also, and I know sometimes you guys do one-on-one, 1 versus 1 debates and 2 versus 2, and I think particularly in the 2, where it's a team of 2, what does not get acknowledged is that if you have 2 people on a panel and they disagree on a lot of things, but they agree on the proposition, that always makes things more interesting, because I think the best, one of the best functions of Open to Debate is that it takes people out of their ideological niches or quadrants. If you use the 4 quadrant, and I remember you guys did a debate, this is years ago now, on, I think it was universal basic income, and you had Andy Stern of the Service Employees International Union and Charles Murray on the same side. And I can't even remember who was on the other side, but it meant that you had to take things more seriously, because you realize okay, we're in a world here where everybody is kind of out of their ordinary perch. And it just makes it so much more interesting. And I think a lot of people wouldn't even think about that, or they would not think about putting together a panel like that. Instead, you would have 2 lefties versus 2 righties, or whatever, right. 2 men versus 2 women.
I want to echo that, actually, if I could, John, really quickly, which is to say that I think we live in a society where so much seems binary, and it's frustrating for so much of the culture because, more people identify as independent than as Republican or Democrat in this country. And yet we are often forcing people into memes of themselves, or the algorithms are, or the culture is, or whatever. One of the things I love about what Open to Debate does is that it encourages intellectual honesty while having a diversity. You can have a range of opinions on a topic where you don't fit into a box, but it encourages intellectual consistency and good faith. And I think that kind of intellectual honesty and variability in your positions across different issues, but the core center of your beliefs, like that is what this organization does. That's so important and is missing in a lot of our culture right now.
We have very little time left if we're going to keep to our promised schedule, which is something I always try to be very serious about. So we got a bunch more questions. I'm just going to have to read the questions because we don't have time, I don't think. But how do you guys stay informed on the news without opinion contaminating the facts? I think we've kind of touched on that. Will you ever bring back the vote? It's an ongoing conversation all the time. Nick, you were in debates with votes. Did you? Yeah. You liked it?
It gives you something to work towards. I mean, it can become a little bit of an obstruction where it's like, okay, I just want to win the vote rather than make a compelling argument or, talk about my vision of the world. But in a way, I think it's good because it keeps people engaged and it provides a finale and a conclusion to things.
Okay, another question. Is there any topic, debate, or debate that would be beyond the pale? Where do panelists think the limit of platforming is, if any? Very big question that I think we should reserve for another time when we can talk at it at length. It's a really important question. John, the most amazing skill you have in summarizing both sides' positions at the end of round one. How do you do that so quickly and accurately? I'm just amazing. I just listen very, very, very closely.
I guess it's that journalism training of yours. I have to admit, I've worked at Reason for 32 years, and I was a journalist before that. I never have taken a journalism class, and I couldn't even fully tell you all the W's, who, what, where, when, why, and whatever. Or I'm not exactly sure I know what the inverted pyramid is. But, that it works very well for you.
Are there any debates that went completely off the rails? Save that for another conversation as well. Generally speaking, not really, but some came close. But we can talk about those another time. I have to go back into my method acting piece.
Can I ask you just a real quick question, John?
Sure.
Because you have hosted or you've moderated over 300 debates. Have you ever been completely, changed by a debate or by either the way it went or the content where you were like, holy cow?
Oh, a lot. I wouldn't say that I've ever had a very big conversion of one opinion to another, but in so many debates, I've learned so much more and it's much greater depth about the topics that are involved, a whole bunch of them. Because of the studying that I do for them, and I would say that my understanding of the issues always become more nuanced, which in itself is a pretty good outcome for anybody who comes to our debates and watches our debates. I at the end of every debate when we're live, I used to go into the lobby afterwards and ask people, how did you like the debate? And what I really found is that people who had changed their minds, which our data shows represents roughly a third of people who come to our debates actually change their minds. And by the way, in today's world, that's like an amazing thing that we're doing something very, very special there. But they were so excited by the experience of having switched sides, and I'm always kind of blown away by that they weren't sheepish about it. It was, I just never heard that argument before, and it was put so well. I'm really thinking about it in a different way. So that's our magic sauce, I think. So back to my method acting. I want to say, if you enjoyed this event, I invite you to upgrade and become a paid subscriber of Open to Debate on Substack. For $8 a month or $80 a year, you get more of these. These will from now on be subscriber-only conversations and behind-the-scenes events like this one. You'll get first access to tickets for our live in-person debates. You'll have full access to 20 years of recorded debates and it's really interesting. We've been looking at them. Almost all of them still hold up. And you'll be joining this community, which is around the world, the people who follow us. And they're very diverse. They're very interesting. They're very well educated, and mostly they're very curious. And we think that you can have diverse conversations with each other. So if you believe this kind of conversation matters, show us you're with us by becoming a paid subscriber today. They make a great holiday gift as well. So Nick and Nayeema, thank you so much for being here, making the time, and joining the conversation. It was great to have you.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be part of this organization, John. Thanks so much.
And to everybody who's watching and listening, and those who ask questions, I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but there's some I think we'll reserve for the future. Thank you for being part of our community here at Open to Debate. We so enjoy hearing from you, and we hope that you'll continue to watch and listen and comment. We have a great episode out later this week, so stay tuned for that as well. I'm John Donvan. They are Nick and Nayeema. The three of us are the moderators at Open to Debate, and we say good night to you. Thanks for joining us.